Hi, so I'm really lucky today to be here with Christer Ellingsen. And I first met Christer about 15 years ago. And he was working with this drum journey where I had never experienced anything like it before. So I'd never met anybody with a real deep connection to the land in this way. And I'm somebody who struggles a little bit with traveling, which I'll talk a bit about later. But for me to really connect with the land in this way and to really feel the sense of the Norwegian earth meant that I then felt a lot more comfortable being in Norway for the time I stayed in Norway for. And what I wanted to do was to really talk now with Christer about land energy and about how you connect with the land, because it's something that I struggle with and still struggle with. So I'm going to start by asking Christer to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Christer, and I'm a 54-year-old shamanistic practitioner and Wicca priest. My connection to the land, uh, my dad, it all starts with my dad. He was one of those extreme outdoorsmen. In his time, that was in a way a bit different. Now it has become a trend. Everybody goes on expeditions and so on. Back in the day, the only ones that went on expeditions were Nansen and Scott and so on. But that's who he was, yeah. And he would carry me out into the woods and up into the mountains when I was old enough for my mother to let go of me for some hours, yeah. And for the rest of his life, that was an important part of our connection and relation, yeah. Always out and about with huskies in the winter and a rucksack and boots in the summer, and 2 weeks up in the mountain in midwinter Norway. That was Easter celebrations with my dad, yeah. And he also he called himself an atheist, yeah. Later on, when I learned the words, I understood that what he actually was animist.
Mm-mm.
So he would take me out and he would, in his way, I guess, introduce me to the spirits of the land, or the land itself, actually. I don't think he would think of it as spirits of the land, but yeah. And he taught me how to do Utiseta
Mm-mm.
in his way. And he also had a strong connection to the Sami. So I don't know really how much of his stuff came from the Sami, but it was obviously inspired, yeah. So that was the start and the connection. And then back in 1994, I came into shamanism, or shamanism came into me, or something like that. And that just furthered that and made it more conscious, yeah. So the connections and the things I had taken as granted from I was just a small boy suddenly became something tangible and something that uh, I would see what I connected to, and I would be able to communicate and relate to it. And to me, at least, when all these spirits and what I came to know as the divinities and gods and goddesses and so on suddenly fills your world, to me,
Mm.
that made me want to worship. Yeah.
Mm.
So there was a transition somewhere there when from being just connected and being out and about to actually becoming a conscious pagan.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Utiseta.
Hmm.
Can you describe a little bit about what that is?
Well, my dad, he would say that if you have a problem, if you have a real problem that swamps you, don't know what to do and where to turn and so on. Go out into the woods, build a fire, sit down and mull it over overnight. Yeah, that was his version. And there was also a part with a staff and something to hold on to and all of that. To me now, it's something I do. I used to do it quite frequently, but well, I'm getting old and my bones are cold and all of that. So, but what I do when I do it, I ritualize it a bit more than my dad did. And when there's something important, I will even prepare several days ahead, go into fast over that. And then I walk out and I either have a place of power in mind already, or I find a place of power and I approach that and I give some token of my dedication and my earnesty and all that, some small offering or something simple like a pinch of tobacco or something elaborate like something I made beforehand or something like that. I really don't think of it as making an offering as such. It's more a gift that I bring to friends. Yeah. I do the same thing when I go to the neighbors for a cup of coffee. I will bring a cinnamon roll or something like that. So I bring this and I go to the place and I call the spirits by first off, I do it by forming a circle. So I call the spirits I usually call when I cast a circle. Then I sit down and I call specifically the spirits of the land to come and help me. Yeah. And this is very much of a simple dialogue. When I feel I'm in place and I feel I'm greeted and everything is good, I usually start to sing. I'm a singer, yeah. Somanically, I'm a singer. So I usually start to sing, and I have this song that I call or think of as the waiting song, yeah, which is basically calling out to the mother and the spirits and say, I'm here, I'm waiting, please help me or bring me some answers, or I need power to fix this or so on. Yeah, and then I'll sit there. And usually I prepare it in such a way that I go out sometime before the sun goes down, and I very seldom leave until the sun is up again. Even if I get what I need before that, I usually want to have the sunrise with it because that's such a magic time of day, isn't it? And then sometimes when there's something important and I've prepared for that, so I might even have days, I'll stay until it comes, yeah. If it takes 24 hours, that's what it takes. It takes 72, that's what it takes, yeah. And the spirit will come.
And you mentioned that you specifically look for places of power. What would you define as places of power?
If I'm out there looking for a place of power for a specific Utiseta or some other outdoors ritual, I basically just look for the place that feels right. Yeah. And if there's a good old tree there, and if there's some natural source of water, maybe even some characteristic like a big stone or something like that. Basically, when I'm just out looking, I just look for something that feels right and feels welcoming and so on. Yeah.
So how do you know it feels right? So if I was going to go out and find my place, how would I know that it felt right?
You have to use your senses. And
Mm.
then it comes down to how are your senses made? I mean, I am of the way I work, sometimes I can smell stuff, when I'm working
Mm.
with divination or
Mm.
something, suddenly I smell alcohol. Yeah.
Mm.
So I asked the client, what's up with this? Is there a bit too much drink in your life right now?
Mm.
Or I can smell other things. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, Others have more uh, through one of the other senses, like the
Mm.
eyes or hearing or sometimes it's all of that, or
Mm.
it's just a good sense, a good feeling. This
Mm.
this is a good place. Yeah.
So it's really about trusting your instincts and just allowing your body to tell you that it's right and then listening to it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Exactly. When you start off, if this were my first time I were
Mm.
going to go out there, I would have those things in mind. I would think about, would there be it would be nice if there was a natural source of water, like a
Mm.
stream or a some natural source of water, and uh, possibly obvious presentation of all the elements. Yeah, that's a
Mm.
and I also think that working with the local, how to put that, local elements is essential
Mm.
to connecting to the spirits of the land, because
Mm.
that's what they're really made up of, isn't
Mm.
it?
Mm.
So I would like, oh, and also just maybe it's just me being comfortable about stuff, but I also, if there's a good place to sit, let's say
Mm.
there's a overturned tree, so there's a
Mm.
log to sit or on, or a stone that looks like the right height, or something like that.
So
And then,
something,
hmm,
so somewhere that looks like you can spend a long time there.
something that looks appealing to
Mm.
spend the time there, yeah. And then if you're a traditional shamanistic practitioner, you would also look for some kind of hole, some kind of tunnel, somewhere that you
Mm.
might use to go downwards or into the
Mm.
underworld. And when you find a good place of power, a good spot, if it's in your if it's easily reachable, you would use it again and again and again.
Mm.
And for each time you use it, it builds its own kind of power. Your connection with
Mm.
the elements and the spirits of the land and all of that will build something new in that place. Yeah.
Mm.
So you would want to come back again
Mm.
and again. And then for a shamanistic practitioner, it would be a good thing to have a hole to go downwards. Yeah.
Mm. So when you're looking for the hole to go down, you're finding somewhere that when you go into your journey, you go into your trance, you then visualize yourself going into the earth or into the nature. Where are you taking yourself when you go in the hole?
Downwards, down
Mm-mm.
into the underworld, below.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yeah, the hole will take you, or the tunnel will take you to somewhere that is not a physical place, but it's there. Yeah. So
Mm-mm.
so whatever hole you start out with can be large or small, or just like a crack in under a root or something like that.
Mm.
Doesn't really matter as long as it breaks the surface of the earth. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
So you get down.
Mm.
Yeah. But that's a bit on the side of working with the spirits of the land, isn't it? But
Mm-mm.
I,
But it's
I would,
all relative, it's all relevant, so it all links in together. So it's, I mean, I may not have necessarily thought of finding something that is a physical, a physical entrance. I may not have done that as a practitioner. I may have just found, the sea or sat down by a river. I may not have specifically looked for that physical entrance. I would have maybe created one, but I can see that having that physical entrance, then the land is already inviting you. So the hole in the tree or the hole in the cliff is already that invitation to you to enter. And maybe that's the bit that sometimes I miss when I go, right, I want to go and sit outside somewhere. I don't look for the invitation from the land.
And I think this about visualizing a place of power, visualizing a hole
Mm.
or something. I think that's something quite new. I think the
Mm-mm.
old timers would have a place, and probably um, whoever taught you would have the place ready for you, and it might have been used in generations before, yeah, and handed
Mm.
down to the apprentice. Now that's not something that's gone for us, yeah,
Mm.
but we can start building those places of power ourselves. And I find that when it's a place of power that I know intimately,
Mm-mm.
it's a lot easier when I'm going to travel to go there, you know.
Mm.
I can sit down and let the free part of my spirit just go. I don't have to visualize. I go there because I know where it is, and I've been there several times before. Mm,
I think it's interesting because I think some part of me instinctively does this. So when I'm writing guided meditations or I'm writing hypnosis scripts, I use what I know. So I would borrow there's a grave mound in Wales called Tinkinswood, and I often write about Tinkinswood, or I would write about Botany Bay, which has the big sentinel, and I would describe that sentinel. So partly because my imagination prefers to hang things on what's there, but maybe that's instinctively what I'm doing, finding these gateways, finding these things that are already there and have a lot of power.
mm. Well, yeah, that sounds about
Mm.
right. It's,
So,
it's it's really simple. From magic,
mm,
we know that when you do something again and again and again, you make a track.
mm,
Yeah, you
mm,
make a track that is easily accessible. So for each time you've done this specific thing and this specific change of consciousness,
mm,
it becomes a bit easier the next time. Yeah.
mm,
Well, the same with a
mm,
place
mm,
of power. Use it again and again, and it will become
mm,
second nature to just go there and the reflection of all the rituals and all the stuff you've done there will
mm,
still
mm,
linger on and will be
mm.
available for you again and again.
So finding that right place is really key.
It's a good thing. It's not
Mm,
it's not like you should be afraid of trying this because you might do something wrong. No, it's not.
mm,
I mean, we're not Carlos Castaneda, yeah. We're not
mm.
we're, we're not afraid of all these horrible
Mm,
things that will happen if we do something
mm,
wrong. It's more of experience makes it more and more powerful. So the
mm,
first time out, you will find a place, and you will find a place that looks appealing or smells appealing or feels appealing or all of the above. And that's where you sit down and you do your work.
mm,
And
mm.
if it's a great place, well, it would be appealing to come back later.
So one thing that's really different between the UK and Norway is we don't have a lot of areas that are completely quiet. So I live in a place like right out near the sea, and we don't have a huge population compared to somewhere like London. But when I go out, there will always be someone walking their dog. There will always be somebody else there will always be somebody appearing at some point. So does that matter?
In a way it does. Yeah, in a
Mm-mm,
way it does. Of course, if you can walk into the great outdoors, the wild and free,
mm-mm,
and you can sit down and you're quite sure that there will be no one around for
mm,
hours, uh, and you can also bring with you all your magic knickknacks, yeah,
mm,
and you can use them openly, and no one will care, and no
mm-mm,
one will come up and bother, yeah. Of
mm,
course, that makes things simpler. But,
mm-mm,
and this is another, the first time I had to do it in a park,
mm,
just outside the apartment I lived in that at that time
mm-mm,
with this, with the, my daughter was still very young, so it was hard to, I couldn't go far, leave her alone and all of
mm,
that, and there was restrictions like this and restrictions like that. So I went to a park almost in the middle of Stavanger center,
mm,
and I thought, well, okay, just have to do it a go, give it a go. I have to get this work done now, so I just have to.
mm,
And I sat down on the bench and I closed my eyes, and there was a grand old nice tree behind me, and yeah, well, the bench was okay, and oops, and
mm.
off I went. Yeah, it works
So a park bench is as good as anywhere else, or not quite as good as being out completely, but if a park bench is all you have.
because really the power and the connection comes from within. Yeah. So
Mm,
then it's really up to you. How good are you of letting go? How good are you of just closing your eyes and being and doing without
mm,
minding the dog barking and
mm, mm,
the guy that suddenly sits next to you and reads his
mm,
paper
mm,
and so on. It's
mm,
then it's really up to you and your magic training, yeah, and
mm,
your
mm,
discipline. Yeah.
mm. So you spoke about the spirits, and you spoke about you will stay somewhere until they talk to you, until they appear.
Mm.
How do you recognize them?
Oh, it will be obvious. It will be obvious. If you're talking about
Mm-mm,
Utiseta, it will be obvious.
mm,
Yeah.
mm,
I don't know how to say it in another way, but it's not.
mm,
There will be sometimes there will be subtle things like this bird coming by, and
mm,
then maybe this same bird comes back again,
mm, mm,
and then suddenly it becomes very interested in you and your, and you
mm,
might experience that wildlife becomes familiar with you in a way you haven't, something like that. But and then there is visions of some kind, and then there is the
mm,
feeling from inside, and the sudden uh suddenly you feel like something or someone else, yeah, and
mm,
some communication comes through
mm,
your
mm,
blood and bones, and then there
mm,
are visions, and then there are all of these things, and when you put
mm.
that together, there will always be something obvious. Yeah.
Mm. So it's really interesting that it's the land, it's the wildlife that you're experiencing as well. It's the wildlife is the spirits in some way.
Mm. Yeah, and then when we're talking about specifically the spirits of the land, yeah, that's
Mm,
that's um that's a lot of things really.
mm,
In a way, it starts with the elements,
mm,
that and the elementals, the guardians of the elements, yeah.
mm,
Um, and then there are all the smaller gods, so to speak, all the resident spirits or whatever
mm,
that are in the rock, or this special looking rock, or in the
mm,
body of water we were talking about, and
mm,
um, local ones, yeah. And then they become bigger and bigger. And in the end, you're touching something that is deep, old, and really profound. That is beyond you in so many ways. Yeah. But you have to walk that. In a way, you have to go through the whole hierarchy. Yeah. You have to connect with the elements, which you have to connect with to do magic of any kind. Yeah. And then you connect with the spirit of the tree that is close by, just right behind your back, and then possibly the spirit that guards the body of water we were talking about. And then through those you might get in contact with something more, something that is a spirit that has responsibility, so to speak, of a larger area. And in then you might be lucky enough to get in contact with the really grand old ones. And one of the best redemptions or explanations of such a contact I know is in Vivian Crowley's book.
I
Wild
haven't read
Ones.
this actually.
Oh, well, then you have something coming, because it's the whole thing is excellent. But chapter 16, I think, yeah, chapter 16, she talks about such an experience, a drum journey where she connects to what I think of as the old grand ones behind all of it. Those that has in Scandinavian folklore has become the trolls. Yeah, that's to me the same what class of entities you will find described in the sources from Iceland that has become the modern day four guardians of Iceland. Yeah, that you can read about in the sources where they meet them the first time they approach Iceland, and some guys or practitioners are told about that have a special connection with these guardian spirits of the land, and how they utilize that connection in different ways and so on. And in those stories of the Norse sources, there's also explained how there are four on Iceland. There are four of them that have somehow divided Iceland between them. Yeah. And when they come to the shore to defend or something like that, it's the one great big one that is at the center, but he also brings with him hordes of smaller ones. Yeah. So to me, that's kind of an explanation of the hierarchy. The smaller ones that are close by, and then the grand old big ones that are, yeah.
So that's chapter 6, and it's 16, sorry, yeah. Chapter 16, and it's Vivian Crowley's Wild Ones.
Yeah.
Which I think has come out the last couple of years, hasn't it? I know I've got it on my to be read list.
Yeah, it's a couple of years old. Let's see what it says there. Let's see, 2022.
2022. So last year. So definitely worth looking at chapter 16 in that. So you spoke about trolls, and you spoke about the trolls as being the grand, the grand spirits, or the ones that are the older, deeper, stronger. Is that correct?
Well, that's how I see it. Yeah. That's what I think. I have had some kind of connection to these for basically since I was a kid. Yeah. And it's the vetir, it's the land vetir, the bosses of the land vetir, so to speak. Yeah. And in my mind, when I read history and when I well, you know, I of course I grew up with the Norwegian folklore and fairy tales and so on, and that's my understanding of it. The trolls and the characteristics of the trolls were the Christianized version of and for some reason they became only enemies, yeah, for the Christian culture. I'm not going to dwell on that, why and how and so on, but if I'm right, there was obviously a transition somewhere in there from, oh, the old ones would see them as scary in a way. They're not something to, they're not a force to play with. So for the everyday man, they would be mostly scary in the old days too. Yeah. It's not the force you want to be. Yeah.
In Wales, we have this myth of dragons, which are almost a similar thing. So you would talk about the dragon energy of the land. So I wonder if that's sort of what the Welsh would, or when, you know, us in Wales would have instead. How do you know then that you are talking to a troll or that you're experiencing troll energy?
Or the big land veteran, yeah. How do I know? It's a feeling that is beyond compare. It's a power that is beyond. Is an earthly power that is beyond anything else I've experienced. Yeah, there's it's just a feeling, and then of course, I could now I could do a journey to a place where I know one of these are residing in the mountain, and I would bring my staff in the journey, and I would knock on his door, and he would answer me in some way. Yeah.
So you've got a really strong connection with him now.
Yeah. It's not something I dip into every day or not even every month or so on, but it's there. It's always there.
And sorry, I was going to say, and what would be the kind of thing that you would specifically want to talk to the large land Vettier energy about?
In a way, I would see him shammanically. I would see him of kind of one of the coordinators of my work. Yeah, one of the ones that are in the same way as the upper world teachers that would often be gods or goddesses or so on, would be like a student counselor, someone behind it all that would help me coordinate the work and so on. I wouldn't normally go there to ask for help on a sprained ankle or something like that. I would go there consciously. I would try to go there when there's I want to clarify some of the big issues. To me, I often connect with those for eco magic, and then that's a part of that is I think is not so often mentioned or maybe forgotten or something like that. These spirits are a network, right? So yeah, something about, you asked something about what could I do to make it easier when I travel.
Yeah.
Well, these guys are connected. So if you, before you leave home, you talk with the local spirits of the land and
Mm.
tell them what you're about to do, where you're going to go, and what kind of work you are, and maybe even ask them for a vouch. Yeah.
That's a real, I'd never considered doing that. So I hadn't, it's almost as though I don't see all of the land spirits as connected, but of course they are. Of course they have their own little network. So for me, if I want to travel to France, for example, which is really very close to me, but when I go to France, I feel that the energy is wrong and that it doesn't sit right with me, and I feel really disconnected. So if before I go, I spend some time asking my land energy to introduce me to the French land energy, that transition starts 2 days before I travel.
Yeah.
Such a simple solution.
Mm,
But,
it's all really
mm,
simple at the end of the day, isn't it?
mm,
It's mostly us that make things complicated. Yeah.
mm, mm,
So, but that's all of these classes of entities, so to speak.
mm,
They are in kind of a hierarchy. Yeah. So
mm,
that's not the right word, but let's use it anyway. Let's say that the smaller one reports to the bigger one, which
mm,
reports to the grand ones, which have a connection to the grand old
mm,
ones. Yeah.
mm,
And if you talk with the local ones and tell them what you're that you're going on a travel and what's the intention of the
mm,
travel and where you are going to stay and possibly what am I going to try to do there,
mm,
and then even ask them, could you please
mm,
prepare the ground for me or help prepare the ground for me, and so on.
mm. So if you were going to stay with a person, so because I do find traveling really difficult, I ask lots of questions before I go. So I always have somebody to greet me at the airport. I always have somebody to spend that bit of time with me. I may have a bit of time to sort of, so if I kind of get off at a station, then I almost need an hour or two just getting used to the different accents, getting used to a new language if it's a different language. So it's really interesting that rather than just asking people, could you help me? Could you find a nice place? Can you find food that I might be able to eat and all these kind of things? I can do exactly the same with the land energy. I can ask, could you introduce me to this land energy, to these Vetir? And then I can ask those Vetir to look after me while I'm there.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. And you might even get feedback before you go.
Mm.
Yeah. If you're lucky, you
Mm.
might even get feedback before you go.
Because I think what I've been trying to do is arrive somewhere really kind of dysregulated and stressed. And then I've gone, right, I'm going to now connect to the land. And the land's gone, who's this crazy person?
Hmm.
Why do I want to connect with you? Whereas if I do that whole process before I go, I might find it a lot easier.
Exactly. And
Mm,
then if you're doing some kind of magic work, some
mm,
bigger, let's say you're going to do a workshop or something like that.
mm,
This again is not compulsory in any way, but I find that it
mm,
helps to sleep a night at this place, this spot,
mm,
if that's possible.
mm, mm.
There's
So,
always
mm,
yeah, there's always good things in your sleep and your dreams, yeah, and you're open to communication in a good way.
mm. Or possibly, maybe I could do like an astral journey to the place. So I've had a connection there before physically being there.
Yep,
Mm.
yep.
So this reminds me a little bit of the Greenland saga. So where Torbjorg, when she arrives, asks for the hearts of all the animals. She asks to be fed the hearts of the animal, or a heart of each of the kind of animal there. Would you say that that's her getting in touch with the land energy?
To me, that's her getting in touch with the spirits of the farm and the spirits of the örlog and the
Mm,
of the at the family
mhm,
that we know how important the at was to the old ones. So that part about eating the hearts, or that dish of
mhm,
what was it, 4 different hearts or something like that.
mm.
To me, that's more about connecting to the farm and the people than
Ah,
connecting to actually the spirits of the land.
so
She, she
that's
she also has to sleep at night. Yeah, that's
yes.
in my book when I related to the way I work and my system
Mm,
works. That's that's more of connecting to the deeper stuff. But then again, you have to remember that Torbjörg was a local woman, yeah, and her
mm,
connection to the big entities of the land would be impeccable. Let's hope so for her.
mm,
So when she came to a new place on Iceland,
mm.
the connection with the land would be the land itself would be pretty much in place, yeah.
So it wasn't the land she was trying to connect to, it was the people.
That's the way I read it, yeah.
Mm. That makes a lot of sense as well. And I guess, when you do seeing for people, so if I was meeting new people to do divination or readings or seer work for them, I sort of bring my energy out. So I kind of connect in with them. So I just sort of put that invitation of, can I just kind of connect in with your web of weird? Can I find your threads and connect with them? So I guess I do it on a much smaller scale when I would read.
And then there's a lot of like if you go visit the family or a
Mm,
extended family or something, the
mm,
welcoming and the first meal together and the all of
mm,
that, that's an important part of the connection
mm,
itself, yeah. So much that it's even been visualized in some culture with the salt and bread that you're given of the salt and the bread of the house you go to. Yeah, I'm
So it's about rapport building as well. It's about feeling that sense of being connected.
I think so.
Mm.
I think so. And
That's
why should
really,
hmm?
sorry, carry on.
No, go on, go on.
I was just saying that's really interesting.
Yeah, well, that's the way I read it. And why specifically hearts? Well, that's maybe beside the point, but that's I've done some thinking about that too, and it's life source and core and whatnot, and it's the best part of the animal for those of us
Mm,
that are not
mm,
squeamish about certain thing. The heart is the best part of the animal.
mm, mm. So we've spoken a lot about how you would go out into nature, how you would feel that connection. You've given me some really good advice on traveling. Is there anything else that you feel is really important within this land connection and getting to know the land?
Ah, not really, but take your time, yeah. And like I said, I think it all starts with the elements. And when
Mm,
you're in a new place and a new, I think that's where you should start to make sure that your connection to the elements in a local way,
mm,
even if the elements aren't local, but in a
mm,
local way, I think that's where it starts. And then you move on to the nearest tree or looking
mm,
for something further from that, and you build
mm,
you become a part of the network that we were talking about
mm,
that ends up with the grand old ones that we probably call trolls in Norway. Yeah.
mm, mm, mm. So I'm hearing that a lot of it is really based on time. It's you need to give a lot of time for this. It's not something that you can kind of do for half an hour in your lunch break. The investment of time is what will bring you to those larger landvettier.
Yeah, well, that's the start. You
Mm,
to get the foundation and to be connected to that network you just described,
mm,
you have to use time. But then when you are
mm,
connected, it's it's
mm,
it's something that you have to work on all the time. As a shamanistic
mm,
practitioner or a shaman, there's a
mm,
lot of time spent on keeping that network and extending it, and so on. Um, but when the foundational work is good, so you have a good, strong
mm,
connection to the local ones, and through
mm,
hopefully through them, the grand old ladies or men behind it.
mm,
Um, when you go to a new place, it should be a lot easier because the links are already there.
mm. So it's putting in it's putting in the investment now,
Mm,
and then you can just go and spend 20 minutes sitting by your place,
mm.
but you need to put that investment into really gaining that connection first.
I mean, when the foundation is there, you
Mm,
you you have your lunch break and you go out into the
mm,
park to have your cup of coffee and your sandwich,
mm, mm,
and then you dedicate a small piece of the sandwich to the spirits, and you give them some thought and some energy. 2 minutes,
mm,
and that's
mm,
maintaining the connection and the,
mm,
the good network. Yeah.
mm,
And then I think that the next time you're in France and you take your
mm,
baguette
mm,
into the nearest park, you might be
mm.
surprised of how easy the connection is made there too. Yeah.
So you mentioned right at the beginning the song and that you sing to the land. Is there any particular notes or words that you would use for that?
To me, it starts out in making sounds. So that's where it all my shamanic singing started there. Yeah. And then I found out that these sounds I was making had a specific, that it had a value, that it was something I could use in the work some way. And first off, that was shade work, yeah.
Mm,
But I I started to use that song the same way I would use a rattle or a drum or
mm,
something like that. And my singing sounds like just making sounds, a lot of it. But then I also have some songs with words, like the
mm,
waiting song I mentioned earlier that I use for Utiseta and some,
mm,
and I also hand down to the people I
mm,
teach shamanism to. So that's
mm,
the song with words and a tune and
mm,
something that anyone could sing. But then again, the most important part is the way it is sung. Yeah, that you sing it
mm,
with power from a place
mm.
of power.
So it's almost as though you go inside yourself, you connect with yourself to find the song, and then you use that song to connect with the land. So a lot of it seems very instinctive.
And the song carries my power. Yeah, the
Mm,
song is the same way as when I do hands-on healing. Yeah,
mm,
my power is, or the power that runs through me is sent into the client
mm,
by way of my hands. Something you can feel as the power flowing, cold, warm, something like that.
mm,
Well, if you can use song the same way to connect or to relate your power and thus connect to something and give it as a gift of power, or use it to connect your power with the power of the spirits of the land, or whatever. Power singing or singing like that, that's a whole topic of its own, yeah. But if you are not comfortable with or able to just start out making some sounds, of course you could start out with a text and a tune. Just remember that it's all about power. It's not about sounding nice to from a stage. It's about connecting with the power within and giving that, using the song or the sounds as a bridge to connect to, in this case, the spirits of the land. Yeah.
So what you're doing really is you're transferring your energy out by using your voice to do so.
Yep.
And that doesn't have to sound nice.
It doesn't have to sound nice at all. It should sound powerful. And that power can be a squeak, or it can be the thunder of a Norseman, yeah?
And because Zoom doesn't always behave when singing, Christer has recorded the waiting song for us.
Hälsa, hälsa jorda, låt åldern komma. Uta moders djupe skjød, inn i væras grønne lød. Her sitter jeg og venter, visdom, kraft og nærhet vil jeg hente. Elsa, Elsa, jorda, lat åndene komma. Ut av moders djupe skjød, inn i væras grønne lød. Her sitter jeg og venter, visdom, kraft og nærhet vil jeg hente. Elsa, Elsa, jorda, lat åndene komma. Ut av moders djupe skjød, inn i væras grønne lød. Her sitter jeg og venter, visdom, kraft og nærhet vil jeg hente. Blessed be.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Christer. This has been really, really interesting and fascinating. So, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
I hope so. And thank you for having me, and blessed be.
Blessed be.